I caught my girlfriend on a secret vacation with her ex. So I froze our joint bank account and left. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My girlfriend, the woman I thought I was building a life with, was lying to my face and sneaking off with her ex. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. Anger, disbelief, and heartbreak swirled together, leaving me numb. But as the initial shock wore off, I knew I had to act. This wasn't just about her spending our money. It was about the blatant disrespect and the lies. I didn't want to confront her immediately. I needed to think this through, plan my next move carefully. Reacting impulsively would give her the upper hand, and I wasn't about to let that happen. The next day, she was unusually chipper. "I'll be leaving early tomorrow," she said casually over breakfast. "The flight's at 7 a.m. I nodded, pretending everything was fine. "Have fun," I said, masking my emotions. If she noticed anything off about my tone, she didn't show it. Once she left for work, I sprang into action. First, I called the bank and froze our joint savings account. I explained the situation, vaguely mentioning unauthorized withdrawals to ensure they acted quickly. They assured me the account was locked until further notice. Next, I started packing. Not for a trip, but for a permanent change. I boxed up my belongings, making sure to leave nothing behind. The apartment lease was in my name, so I wasn't going anywhere, but she certainly was. Before she got home, I typed out a short, direct note. "See, I know about the trip with your ex. I've frozen our joint account and removed my things from your life. Consider this relationship over. Don't bother contacting me. I deserve better, and so does my future." I left the note on the kitchen counter, right next to her neatly packed suitcase. The next morning, I watched from a nearby cafe as she left the apartment, oblivious to what awaited her. Her Uber pulled up, and she lugged her suitcase downstairs, a big smile on her face. I imagined she was already picturing her romantic getaway. What she didn't know was that her card linked to the joint account wouldn't work. She wouldn't realize it until she tried to pay for something at the airport or maybe even at her destination. Part of me felt guilty, but a bigger part of me felt justified. She'd betrayed my trust, stolen from our future, and lied repeatedly. She deserved to face the consequences of her actions. Later that day, I got a flurry of angry texts and calls. The messages ranged from incredulous to furious. "What the hell? My name? Why is our account frozen? How could you do this to me? I'm stranded. You're being so petty and immature. Grow up." I didn't respond. Why should I? She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. For the next few days, the texts kept coming, alternating between anger and attempts at manipulation. "Please, just talk to me. We can fix this. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I made a mistake, okay? Let's work through it." But I stayed silent. I'd already said everything I needed to in my note. Word eventually got out among our mutual friends. Some were shocked and supportive, while others tried to guilt-trip me into reconsidering. "She's devastated," one friend said. "Don't you think you overreacted?" "Overreacted?" I snapped. "She lied, stole our savings, and planned a romantic trip with her ex behind my back. How is that something I should just forgive?" That shut them up. A week later, C showed up at the apartment unannounced. I hadn't changed the locks, yet a mistake I quickly regretted. She barged in, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I messed up. I didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "You didn't mean to hurt me? You lied to me for weeks, stole our money, and planned a vacation with your ex. How exactly was that not supposed to hurt me?" She didn't have an answer. Instead, She launched into excuses. How she'd been confused, how the trip meant nothing, how she'd always planned to come back to me. "I was going to tell you," she said. "I just didn't know how." "That's not good enough," I said firmly. "You didn't just hurt me, you shattered my trust. There's no coming back from this." She broke down, begging for another chance. But I stood my ground. "This isn't about one mistake," I said. "It's about a pattern of dishonesty and disrespect. I deserve a partner who values me, not someone who treats me like a backup plan." Eventually, she left, realizing there was nothing more to say. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I transferred my portion of the savings into a new account and closed the joint one entirely. I reconnected with friends, threw myself into work, and even started therapy to process everything. It wasn't easy, but day by day, I felt lighter, stronger. The experience taught me a lot about trust, boundaries, and self-worth. I'd been so focused on building a future with C that I'd ignored the red flags along the way. Now, I was determined to never let that happen again. As for C, I heard through the grapevine that her trip didn't go as planned. Apparently, her ex wasn't as committed to rekindling things as she thought, leaving her stranded and heartbroken. Karma, I suppose. Looking back, I have no regrets about how I handled things. It wasn't easy to walk away from someone I loved, but it was necessary. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the greatest growth. And in the end, I learned that choosing myself wasn't just an option, it was the only option. It wasn't just the money, it was the betrayal. The knowledge that someone you trust, someone you've built a life with, could stab you in the back so effortlessly felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't even the first punch. The discovery of her lies had already knocked the wind out of me. This, though? This was the twist of the knife. I could have confronted her right then, demanded answers, screamed or cried, but something in me snapped. I didn't want to give her a chance to explain or twist the truth to suit her narrative. No, I wanted her to feel the same panic, the same helplessness that had consumed me the moment I realized what she'd done. So I waited. The next morning, she carried on as if nothing was wrong, smiling and carefree, all while I knew the truth. I played along, kissed her goodbye as she grabbed her suitcase, and even told her to have fun on her so-called girls' trip. The door closed, and the apartment felt eerily quiet. I sat there for a moment, staring at the spot where she had been standing, trying to process everything. Then, like a switch flipping, I sprang into action. I wasn't going to sit around and let her make a fool out of me any longer. The first thing I did was freeze our joint bank account. It was petty, sure. But after reading those texts and emails, after seeing how she'd been funneling money out of our account to fund her little getaway, I figured she deserved it. A few hours later, my phone rang. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed as soon as I picked up. I leaned back in my chair, trying not to let the satisfaction seep into my voice. "What do you mean? My card's getting declined everywhere. What did you do to the account?" "Oh, I froze it," I replied, keeping my tone calm and casual, though my heart was pounding. "Figured it was the least I could do after finding out you're on vacation with your ex." There was silence on the other end. A heavy, loaded silence. Then, finally, the inevitable. "It's not what you think." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, humorless sound. "Cut the crap, see? I read the texts, the emails. You've been planning this for weeks." Her stammering excuses tumbled out like a poorly rehearsed script. "It's not like that, I swear. He's just a friend." I needed a break, and I thought, "A break?" I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. You needed a break, so you lied to me, stole our money, and ran off with your ex? Are you even hearing yourself right now? I didn't want to hurt you, she said weakly. Hurt me? I repeated, incredulous. My grip tightened on the phone. So lying to me, sneaking around, and draining our savings was your way of not hurting me? That's a new one. And then, as if she couldn't sink any lower, she tried to turn it all back on me. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with saving for that stupid house, I wouldn't have needed to do this, she snapped. You've been so focused on the future, you forgot about me. I felt like I'd been slapped. Are you kidding me right now? You couldn't have just talked to me about how you felt? Instead, you went behind my back and did this? I needed space, she yelled. Time to think with him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Right, so he's just a friend. Huh? That's why you've been sneaking around and lying to me for weeks? She didn't answer. Her silence said everything I needed to know. We're done, I said finally, the words coming out cold and final. What? You're breaking up with me over this? Her voice cracked, the panic setting in. You lied. You used our money, and you went on a trip with your ex, I said, ticking off each betrayal like items on a checklist. What did you expect? You can't just leave me stranded here, she yelled. How am I supposed to get home? That's not my problem, I said, my tone icy. You made your choice. And with that, I hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long moment after the call ended, the adrenaline coursing through me. I should have felt victorious, triumphant even, but instead, I just felt tired. In the days that followed, I set about dismantling the life we'd built together. I moved out of our apartment, canceled every bill tied to my name, and got my name off the lease. It felt like erasing her from my life, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. She, of course, wasn't going to go quietly. She started telling people that I'd abandoned her and left her broke. Classic C, always the victim. For a while, I worried about what people would think. But eventually, I realized I didn't care. Those who mattered knew the truth, and those who didn't, well, their opinions weren't worth my time. The few people who sided with her only confirmed what I'd always suspected. They didn't know the real her either. It hurt, though. Not in the way I expected, but it hurt all the same. It wasn't losing her that stung. It was the realization that the person I thought I loved never really existed. The kind, loving, trustworthy woman I thought I was building a future with was just a facade. She'd been wearing a mask the whole time, and I was too blind to see it. In the months that followed, I found myself replaying our relationship in my head, looking for the red flags I'd missed. They were there, of course always there, in hindsight. The way she'd dismiss my concerns, her defensiveness when questioned, the little lies she told that I shrugged off because I didn't want to seem controlling. People will always show you who they are. You just have to pay attention. And when they do, you have two choices. Ignore it and hope they change, or walk away. I chose to walk away. It wasn't easy. Starting over rarely is. But with every step I took away from her, I felt lighter, free. I poured my energy into rebuilding my finances, my confidence, my life. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted away from during the relationship, started going to the gym again, and even picked up a hobby I'd abandoned years ago. The process wasn't linear. There were days when the weight of everything hit me all over again, and I'd sit there wondering how I could have been so blind. But those days grew fewer and farther between as time went on. One day, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry for everything. I miss you. I stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it without replying. Because here's the thing. I didn't miss her. Not the real her, anyway. I missed the illusion, the fantasy of who I thought she was. But I didn't need illusions anymore. I'd learned my lesson.